My name is Marliza. Last name is Melzer. I am running for Legislative District 33, position 2.
And what made you decide to run for this office?
Well, I mostly am running due to out-of-hand taxation. Sure, we need taxes, but even when we had a surplus last year, our legislature, including my opponent, voted for more, to the tune of $27 billion in new taxes, this just last year alone. And this year, before COVID, my opponent once again voted in favor of more taxes, a 13.7% increase in property taxes. I can't sustain that. I'm a homeowner. I can't sustain that. And I suspect that few can. This year, too, the legislature voted in favor of a new explicit sex ed program beginning in kindergarten. Our children are precious, and I don't think they need to be sexualized at school. Education should focus on the basics. So most people polled were not in favor. They pushed it through anyhow. Whatever happened to listening to your constituents? I don't get it. I don't know why voters keep voting the same people in who don't do right by them. So once again, our current legislators did not listen to their constituents, which is why I'm also running to bring truth and transparency back to the citizens of Washington State.
And could you tell me a little bit about your district?
Yeah. It's mostly the south end, south of Seattle. It includes all of Des Moines, all of Normandy Park, most of Canton SeaTac, parts of unincorporated North Highline and Tukwila, a sliver of Burien, and a bit of Renton. So it's kind of a big pot of soup. There's more than 72,000 voters, and we have a fairly diverse community here.
And what kind of experience would you be bringing to this job?
The only experience that I need is that I'm of age and I'm a citizen.
And you talked about taxation. What kind of taxation system would you like to see?
I think the taxes need to be reeled in. I think departments, the various governmental departments, need internal audits, not to audit themselves. I think they need to be audited. And I think any excess, right now we're in a pandemic. Who knew a year ago that our canvas would look like it looks today? Nobody, I would say most people this would not have even been on their radar, what's going on now. And how to come back out of it? Well, it's going to be a first. Nobody's been through this and come back out of it because nobody's been into it before. So, but what I can say is you can't keep taxing the heck out of the middle class. And every time you think you need more money, hit the middle class and hit them and hit them and hit them. People are losing their homes. In my district, well, not even in my district, in the state, we've had so much, people have lost their homes from taxes they can't pay. That adds to the homelessness problem. That increases the destitution and the homelessness. It's kind of a vicious cycle. I think when you start asking for taxes, when you have a surplus, I think you're just being greedy. Now, it turned out this year that it was probably a good thing that there was a surplus because of the COVID thing, which I...
But that was just coincidental, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, I don't think that was planned at all. But just that there was extra money because so many businesses shut down because the taxes are the county, the state isn't collecting the taxes that they want for because people don't have it. But what's going to happen once this ends? If we don't have legislative sessions and so forth and put a moratorium on evictions, the banks have raked over homeowners and property owners for years. They securitize their mortgages and they get paid multiple times. So I think we need to stop. There's a lot of banks who are willing to work with homeowners and property owners and say, okay, well, we'll put off your payment. That's fine. But they won't let you know up front whether they'll tack it on to the end of your mortgage or whether they're going to call the full amount due right at the end of the pandemic. And then what happens? Hundreds of thousands in our state alone, millions of people nationwide, millions. It'll make 2008 look like it was Shangri-La. the fraudulent foreclosure incidents that we had back then, it'll be way worse than that. And they haven't even called a special session, and I think that's very remiss. There's a lot of things that need to be determined, and you don't wait until after the next election when people are screaming right now. We need leadership, and we don't have it. We don't have it in our governor.
So how long do you think we need that kind of eviction moratorium?
I can't put a time on that until things get ironed out. I mean, it depends. How fast do people move? How fast don't they move? What are the hiccups going to be along that pathway? It's kind of like when you pave a new pathway, you don't know if the rock that you're trying to pull out of the ground, if it's just a little pebble, or if you keep digging around it and it winds up to be a big boulder underneath there. You don't know until you get there. And I think it's going to require discernment and a little bit of smart and some common sense.
So going back to taxes, one thing that's been kind of a theme on this show lately has been people complaining about the sales tax, about how it's very regressive and makes poor people pay oftentimes a larger percentage of their income than the richer folks. Do you have any thoughts about that?
You said about sales taxes?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you a little story. I've got my youngest son. He's 24. He buys sugar-free stuff, and I tell him don't buy sugar-free stuff. He says, "Well, I'm buying sugar-free stuff because I'm in Seattle now, and they've got the sugar tax, and I'm not paying it." So he'll buy sugar-free stuff just to prevent that. I think it's ridiculous. I think when you start sectioning out things, and we've got taxes. I mean, it's really confusing. There's layers. There's taxes on top of taxes, and then they tax the taxes sometimes. Anything you buy, it's like, how many times was it taxed? And people talk about even medical. Why is medical so expensive? Back when Nixon was president, once they allowed HMOs and allowed them to be for profit, the government started taxing them too. So everything that the government's saying, oh, well, this is too expensive, healthcare is too expensive, they're taking a big chunk of that, of the cost, by medical taxes. They're paying property taxes, they're paying business taxes, they're paying income tax, or not state income taxes, but taxes on their income, perhaps to the federal government, but they're paying. And that's going to keep our prices of healthcare up, inflated. So that's all I have to say about that right now.
Yeah. So you also mentioned about the sex education stuff, which has also been brought up a couple times on the show previously. Could you tell me what was so objectionable about it? We haven't actually had anybody really come on to talk about the issue in particular.
Well, one of the sponsors of the proposal has come out and said that the youngest students will learn lessons such as what constitutes good touch and bad touch. The bill doesn't mention that. So just even given that, I believe that the intent is deceptive. As well, there was concern about whether or not to print the materials in multiple languages, so it could be understood by more people in our communities. And the determination was it will only be printed in English. Why is that? Why are they withholding this information? It always makes me suspicious when people are withholding information or they're spewing lies. And withholding information from immigrant and non-English speaking families, I think is just ludicrous. So when you start off on a platform with deception, it doesn't pass the sniff test. And children are they're innocent. They're our tomorrow. They don't need to be sexualized. We figure it out. A lot of people, and most people probably masturbate when they're kids. They don't know what they're doing. They just know they touch themselves and they go, oh, that feels good. But they don't need somebody to say, oh, you touch yourself this way, and oh, that'll feel so good. And if somebody else wants to touch you, well, that's your decision. You can say yay or nay. These are children. We're talking 5 years old, for goodness sakes. Let them play with each other. I don't mean diddle with each other, play with them. I mean play with each other like, hopscotch, like, basketball, like jacks. like whatever they want to play. That's child appropriate. But I have a problem with that whole sexual agenda.
So what are some of the other
In
issues facing your...
in early
Oh, yeah, I'm
classes.
sorry.
Pardon me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I talked over you. I'm so sorry about that.
No worries. What?
Oh,
Speak.
yeah, I just wanted to know what are some of the other issues facing your district that can be addressed at the state level?
Well, let's see. One of the first biggest issue, in my opinion, is lack of leadership by Jay Inslee and by our current legislature. They should have called, in my opinion, a special session a long time ago. As I understand, there's no intention of calling a special session, and they're just going to wait until next year. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and I think they need to be a little bit more responsive to the people. And Governor Inslee, I mean, he didn't even know that part of Capitol Hill was taken over, or so he said when he was called and asked about it. We have absent leadership. That's a problem. Our economy is struggling, and people are in fear for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of misinformation going around about COVID. We were told that millions are going to die, and the reality is that far less than 1% have died. Most were in nursing homes with other comorbidities. Then they tell you, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear a mask. It came from bats. It came from a lab. Was it nature-made or man-made? The questions go on and on. So I suppose one of the biggest issues have become, well, all things COVID, getting through it and recovering mentally, emotionally, and financially. After that, I go back to taxes and housing. People are literally getting taxed out of their homes again, which leads to more destitution and homelessness. You know, people say, oh, we need to put money toward homelessness. It's like, why don't you stop creating homelessness in the first place? Then we can go, okay, then you can count the numbers of people, and you can go, all right, we need to do something to help these people. Then you know where you're at, and you know where to go from there. You don't have the homeless population just growing incrementally. So, yeah, I think they need to arrest that out of control taxation. And then you've got the usual stuff: parental rights, transportation, healthcare, those kinds of things. But until we get through COVID, I mean, it's going to be quite the juggling game, which you have to address first.
Yeah, COVID is...
Pardon me?
COVID is kind of like the big issue right now. How would you have liked to have seen the state handle it?
Oh, well, very differently than they did. If I had been governor, I would not have mandated any lockdowns. I would have looked at the actual science, not at the people who are affiliated with the Gates Foundation and affiliated with Soros Foundations and all the stuff that goes on behind closed doors. I tend to look at the more maverick researchers who come out, the ones who the globalists would like to see silenced. And, you know, I'll give you something simple about masks. On the N95 masks, the instructions on there, the directions, the information, it says that these masks do not prevent any disease. And they include coronavirus in that. It says it right there. And then all over the news, even, you know, the Fauci, he says, well, masks don't work. Oh, that's because we wanted the N95 masks just for the other people. Well, the other masks aren't good enough, and cloth masks don't do anything. And the truth is, a viral particle, is smaller than the weave of any fabric of any type that you're going to find in a mask. So the particulates can still get through. And we have a less than 1% death rate. People talk about the jelly bean thing. If you had 100 jelly beans in a jar and you knew that one of them could potentially kill you, would you eat any of the jelly beans? And most people say, no, I wouldn't eat the jelly beans. Well, that same person who says they won't eat the jelly beans, knowing that one of them could potentially kill them, that same person will get in their car and drive down the road knowing that they could be killed. They eat GMOs. They participate in risky sports and other risky behaviors. So give the jelly bean one a rest. This was blown, in my opinion, way out of proportion. They've been keeping people in fear. And the ironic thing is there is, oh gosh, I should look it up on my computer. I have a document from Washington State that says lockdowns and mask wearing, not that exact verbiage, but it alludes to that, will continue until November 5th. And people say it's not political. I'm pretty sure it is. Look who's doing what. I mean, really, turn off your TVs. Quit drinking the Kool-Aid and quit listening to the programming. They're feeding you a bunch of BS. It's about taking down Trump. It's about Agenda 2030. It's about the New World Order. And if you think that's conspiratorial, well, I'll tell you what. Every president in contemporary times has spoken about the New World Order in one address or another that they have given. So there. So it's out there, and you can call it whatever you want to call it, but truth is truth.
Well, kind of going to that, if we can go back a little bit, why would we not want to trust like the Gates Foundation?
Wouldn't we trust the Gates Foundation? Well, we can start with the virus. Bill Gates is the Gates Foundation is one of the backers of the PureBright Institute. And the PureBright Institute has a patent from 2015 on a coronavirus. And coronaviruses have been around for a long time, but in order to get a patent on one, because it's a natural occurring thing, it has to be modified out of its natural state. So there goes the thing. Dr. Fauci said in 2017, he said the Trump administration will face a surprise virus or pandemic during his time in office. These things are said, and Fauci's also on the board of directors for the Gates Foundation. Follow the dollars. Inslee is holding tight on all of this, and he's being quiet about a lot of things instead of providing leadership. He's got a relative who's on the board of the Gates Foundation as well. Dr. Birx in Washington, D.C. has, I believe it's a daughter, who's also on the board of the Gates Foundation. So when you look at who's in bed with who, you can come up with some likely conclusions. And when you know that Fauci provided $3.5 million of our taxpayer dollars to the lab in Wuhan, these things, they just don't pass the sniff test. And yeah, there's a lot of lies to debunk all of that. There's lies, and there's so many lies that it's really hard to sift out what's a lie and what's truth. But if you know anything about anything, viral molecules are smaller than the fabric weave, and they will get through. So, and to trash the entire economy of this country, of our state, of our communities, for something that kills less than 1% of the people, to shut down everything. The suicides have increased, the mental health issues, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, hostilities, depressions, they're huge. And the comorbidities that people have, they're not getting in to see the doctors because they're afraid to go to hospitals because they might get the dreaded COVID. I don't know. Live free or die. Get over it.
You said,
and I'm not saying that. So wait a minute. I'm not saying that so loosely. I'm not diminishing anybody who's lost their life, anybody who's been sick.
Oh yeah.
The truth is, people die, and people get sick, myself included. And usually, most of the times, we survive what we get sick with, and sometimes we don't. And that's life. And if you look at 1% to say we destroyed an economy, we've got people starving on the streets now because the food chains were broken. Those are huge problems. More people are going to die from this than could have ever died from a virus, or this virus anyhow. So I'm done now.
Yeah, well, we do live in this like time where it's so hard to tell what's real and what's not, because like we already know, but there's all this fake news stuff going around. Like how do you tell the difference? What would you tell someone who's like trying to figure it out?
I do a lot of research. I've always been researching is in my nature. So I'll give you an example. There was a meme that showed up online one night. It was a picture of I don't know whether it's granite or marble, or I don't even know if there's a difference, but a stone piece that says the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's right out in front of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. At the top of it, what I saw was in the same type of engraving, it said something about home of world depopulation or something like that. And I was ready to hit the share button, and I went, nope. I don't know if that's true or not, because people are so good now with photoshopping. They can put words in your mouth. They can make things. It's really pretty heinous. And I'm not running as a Republican or a Democrat, but man, the both of them, they're both as bad as each other as far as lying goes. When you get higher up. So I would think that this would have come from more of a conservative angle, that the home of depopulation, because Gates talks about depopulation. He's a eugenicist. So a eugenicist, I'm not going to trust them with my life. They want us dead. So just by definition of the word. Anyhow, I drove to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to go check it out. And it wasn't there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was a lot. Pardon me?
I was surprised. I mean, you actually went out there to verify. That's awesome, because a lot of times you can't do that, actually go there.
Well, I actually went there. I went, and I gave it. I just grabbed my purse. I went, screw it, I'm going there, and I did, and it wasn't there. And I was like, my gosh, the right's complaining about the left's complaining about the right, and they're both doing nefarious stuff. It's like, who can you believe? That's why I trust my own research. I dig and I dig deep. I've gone down a lot of different rabbit holes. Some people call them conspiratorial. I call them reality. Does it pass a sniff test? And if it doesn't, start digging. And I do.
So we're just about out of time. Do you have any final thoughts for why people should be giving you their votes?
Well, yeah, we need for all of our leaders to tell us truth. Like in this case, in the COVID case, we need them to tell us the truth, like the degree to which they have skewed the numbers. I have a friend. She was classmate of a good friend of mine. In her early 30s, she died of a drug overdose just 4 weeks ago. Her mother was shocked to find out that they put on her death certificate COVID. The numbers clearly are skewed. That's not an isolated incident. This has been going on from the get-go, because they have to have the numbers, because you can't say, well, I'm responsible for letting all these people die from whether it's depression or whatever they're dying from these days, suicides, all kinds of things. It's not just COVID. Well, it's because of what you can blame it on that, but all the things that are happening because of it are worse than the virus itself. When I'm in office, I'll tell the truth as I'm able to discern it. I will provide truth and transparency. And I think that's the best I can do for anybody. And listen to my constituency, unlike our current legislature.
And if people want to learn more about you and your campaign, where should they go?
I have a website. It's Marliza 4WA. That's the number 4. And my name is spelled Marliza. That's Z as in zebra, 4WA.com. I also have a Facebook page, a campaign Facebook page. It's Marliza 4WA. When you go to Facebook, you just type in the search bar, or at least for a while. And I have a listed number, if anybody needs to make a phone call or anything or a text. I'm not afraid to use my personal phone.
All right. And we'll have those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time coming on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Talk to Seattle, and I've been your host, Jason Rigdon. If you liked this episode, would you please share it on social media? Most podcast clients have a little share button. Click that and tell people why they should listen. If you want to support Talk to Seattle, would you please give the show a rating and review on iTunes? It really helps new people discover the show, and it makes me happy. Follow Talk to Seattle on Twitter at TalkToSeattle, and email any questions, comments, or suggestions to jasonrigdon@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.